Hello biostatisticians, this is a brief video to walk you through the process of creating dummy variables in SPSS for the purpose of single or multiple regression. So a couple things, let's back up to our earlier lecture, and if you will recall, dummy variables are dichotomous variables that represent a specific category. So for example, if we take our binge drinking variable and detail in, you'll see that we have 6 different categories plus decline to answer, starting with 0, no binge drinking, going forward to daily or weekly binge drinking. Each of these is a discrete category, a very specific category, and there's no measurable difference between the two because it's a categorical variable between each of the categories. And so in order to have this work appropriately in regression, they need to be changed into dichotomous indicators or dummy variables. So we're going to convert this binge drinking variable to dummy variables. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to go up and this time use the drop-down for transform. We're going to find create dummy variables and select create dummy variables. You'll then see this dialog box. We're going to pick the variable that we want. In our example, we'll use binge drinking. And as we often do in SPSS, click the little arrow to take it over. So we're going to create dummy variables for binge. For dummy variable labels, we're going to use value labels. We will be in ascending order. We're not going to worry so much about the macro definition, so you don't need to worry about that one. And measurement level usage, you want to make sure that we do not create dummies for scale variables. Now we know that binge is not a scaled variable, it's a categorical variable, an ordinal variable, but still, we want to leave this to change to do not create dummies. Root names, we're going to make the root name binge, or whatever the variable name is for the dummy that you're going to create. And the rest of this we will leave blank. We'll press OK, and as we can see, we'll get a pop-up box, standard pop-up box from SPSS that explains what the categories are that it's going to create. Okay? We then see in our variable view that we now have 5 new variables. We have binge 1, binge 2, binge 3, binge 4, and binge 5. Each of these is a nominal variable. And if we go into our data view and go take a look at the binges, we'll see that these are all 0s and 1s. Now the dummies can be used in multiple regression. So when you use a dummy variable in multiple regression, if you're using all of the categories, you need to figure out which category should be your comparison group. And you need to leave that out of your multiple regression. So let's go back and take a look at our binge variable. And if we look at the original binge variable, you will see that category 0 is no binge drinking. Okay? That is the same as binge 2. Notice here in the label, it says that the binge 2 is no binge drinking. So we're going to use that as our comparison group. We're going to compare those who do binge drink to those who do not. So if we were going to do this as a multiple regression, I would go up to Analyze, go to Regression and Linear Regression. And for my outcome, I'm going to use BMI pre on this one just as an example. And then I will include the binge categories. Now, which binge categories do we want to include? We want to include all of the binge categories except for our omitted category, which in this case is binge 2. So we're not going to include binge 2. So we'll move over binge 1, binge 3, 4, and 5. And now our point of comparison in the regression will be compared to those who do not binge drink. You always need to leave an omitted variable, and it's better to choose which one to leave, otherwise SPSS will do it for you. When we press OK, up comes our regression. And so we see that there is no significant relationship between binge drinking and BMI before the intervention because we have no significance here. If you have questions on this, feel free to shoot me an email. For analysis number 3, you are going to need to create categorical variables. The instructions say to create categorical variables, to create dummy variables for female and for race. Now, think about what you're working on there. Female is already a dummy variable because it's already dichotomous. So you don't, in fact, have to create a dummy variable for female. And this is a little hint in the end of this lecture to see how many of you actually listen all the way through. You do need to create dummy variables for race. Let me know if you have questions.